Hello and welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture. I am, as always, your co-saint, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today we are doing something a little bit different. We're getting a little nostalgic. And we're going to be talking about one of our favorites, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
So, instead of our usual spoiler alert going right here, we're going to be talking about why we're actually doing this.
Yes.
We are doing a little bit of a cross-promotion with a friend of ours to really kind of let you guys know about this wonderful blog that he has and the things that he's doing. I really enjoy kind of the things that are going on right now with the pulling little bits and pieces out of pop culture and making them a little bit of reality into our own world, which is what we do, trying to do with those moral philosophy moments. And so I think it works well together here, is that little bit of cross-promotion. So I'm going to let you talk about him, because you know him a little bit better.
Yeah, so the blog is called MuchAdoAboutMuffin. .blog. Get it? I was pausing for effect, so then they'd be like, oh, muffin. It's by Chris Kellison-Decker, and I have done some shows with him in the past, some theater shows, and that's kind of how I know him. His blog, as you probably know, has to do with baking, with the muffin. What he does is he bakes desserts and baked goods from different literary works. He, in the past, has done a chocolate cake from To Kill a Mockingbird. Sorry, for a second there, I was like, the one with the bird and the...
and the racism.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking, and the racism. But anyway, so he's done that. So check it out, MuchAdoAboutMuffin.blog. He is also going to be doing, as you probably know, a dessert inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, more specifically the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's a specific dessert in there that is very specific to the plot line. So,
and if you've ever had it mass-produced, it is not good at all. So
no.
I'm hoping that he's going to put his own twist on it, so it'll probably be much better.
Yeah, if you buy the box stuff, it's like...
It's jelly covered in powdered sugar.
Should we give too much away?
Well,
it's more complicated than that, so I'm sure he'll put it a little bit more eloquently. But anyway, so check him out, again, MuchAdoAboutMuffin.blog.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris, for doing this. We hope that our listeners will go and give him a shout-out and let him know that we sent you.
Yeah.
And you can do a whole Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe day. You can go and watch your favorite version, or listen to your favorite version, or read your favorite version, or let's see, what other formats is it in?
Listen.
You can taste your favorite version as well if you're going to be doing along with Chris's blog. So
yeah, but anyway, so we should also say welcome. If you found us because of Chris, welcome. We embrace you with open arms, and we hope that you enjoy us.
Yeah. And you can check out some of our other episodes and find out how we came to be patron saints of pop culture.
Yes. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah. Our review and summary.
Yes.
So my brief summary is the Pevensey children have been displaced by the Blitzkrieg bombing of London, and so they have gone to stay with a person out in the country who turns out to be an eccentric magician's nephew. And Lucy, while playing hide-and-go-seek, finds a world on the other side of a wardrobe.
Good job. My summary, 4 children are whisked away from danger to live with an old man in his mansion.
Okay.
They have a lot of rules to follow, so it's not much fun, so they play hide-and-seek. And then they go into this wardrobe, and it's filled with wonderment and magic. And they fight, there's some battles, and then they become kings and queens.
All right.
And then they come back.
Well, my review is I grew up with the books, and I grew up with C.S. Lewis primarily because I grew up in the evangelical church, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I really feel that this is one of my favorites. This is something that is really near and dear to me because this is what I grew up with. These are the books that I grew up reading as a child. I really did read all of them until I got bored in the middle of the Silver Chair, but I did finish it. I did finish all of them. Final Battle does get a little bit long, but we're not talking about that particular book, and that's something I may bring up a little bit later for C.S. Lewis. But yeah, it really is inspiring to me. Having watched the movie again this morning, it was kind of like, ooh, the acting wasn't as good as I thought it was. And it's probably because I came into it going, well, this is my C.S. Lewis chance to see him on the big screen. And it really turned out to be very not that fantastic as I
they're
remember.
Child actors. You can't.
Lucy was the best. Like,
yeah,
seriously.
She was pretty good,
yeah.
I do have to say.
But I've got a little bit of redemption for Edmund there. So,
all right. So, my review. All I did was I just read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, probably like in the 4th grade. I was aware that there was other books out there, but the way our curriculum in Billings, Montana, it didn't give me enough time to like read the other books or like really discover the rest of them because we were tasked to read a book every 2 weeks. And we were just given these books. So I really didn't get a chance to explore the vast world that was the Chronicles of Narnia. I honestly thought it was just one and maybe 2 or 3 others. I didn't realize how many extra books there were. And as an adult, when we got married, I decided that because I forced you to read Harry Potter, that I would do my due diligence and read the Chronicles of Narnia, which I did. And I realized, like, why so many people like them. Like, I totally get it. To be honest, growing up, when I first read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the whole connection between Christianity and the books totally just, like, went over my head. Maybe because I just didn't grow up in the culture that you did, to where it was it was pointed out very specific reasons why it was connected. So I don't know, but I still enjoyed them. As a kid, I probably would have read more, but I found Harry Potter.
All right. Well, throughout this, I'm going to be giving a little fun facts about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien because they are my heroes. This is something that, I grew up reading them. I grew up with them, big part of my life and my development. And so I had on my bucket list to visit the Eagle and the Child in Oxford in England, which is where the Inklings met, where Tolkien and Lewis had their informal gathering of writers where they would read each other's works. They would give critique on each other's works and
poke fun at each other's works.
Yes. Well, there's going to be a little bit of that fun fact here in a little bit, but that was something on my bucket list, and I actually had the opportunity to do that, which I really wanted to go and have a beer and toast the Inklings, which I got to do. They have a nice little plaque in the corner in the Eagle and the Child. I actually stole a glass from pint glass from the Eagle and the Child. I offered to pay for it, and they're like, "Well, there's a gift shop down the street. Go buy one from there." I'm like, "No, you don't get it. I want one from here." And
you do realize that those glasses that were there were probably made like in the early 2000s.
No, I don't care. That's the thing is that I wanted one from there, from the actual place, from the actual pub.
I get it. I'm shaking my head.
Don't. Well, and I mean, there's a lot to that for me, and I think that C.S. Lewis in himself, C.S. Lewis, I think, in some ways has become a different figure to evangelical and fundamentalist Christians. Mm-hmm. Is that C.S. Lewis really became the father of the Western Church. in a sense, because they're all based on the stories, on the Chronicles of Narnia, the allegory that is within the Chronicles of Narnia, each and every one of the books, and especially in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I think that's really flawed, because these characters are very flawed. And I think as a writer, this is hard for me to say this, but I think that any writer attempting to create a picture of the divine, of God, or of anything else is going to ultimately fail, because they're going to put their own flaws into whatever it is.
Yeah, they're going to put their take on what I feel like the divine should be.
Exactly. It's more eisegesis rather than exegesis, in a sense. And Aslan, for instance, has become what I like to call the American Jesus. Is that Aslan and this is a fun fact about C.S. Lewis here in this, is that C.S. Lewis, especially posthumously, has come under fire. He was racist, he was sexist, and, he really was a product of his time. He does talk about this in some of his other books, about how he really struggled to see human beings as good, and that he was raised in the church. He left the church for a long time. He didn't come back to the church until his 30s because of J.R.R. Tolkien. As C.S. Lewis put it, is that I came to Christianity kicking and screaming. And I think this is evident in Aslan, is that Aslan is not a nonviolent figure.
Oh, no.
And C.S. Lewis puts in writing in some of his interviews, even, it says that Aslan is how Jesus is represented in Narnia. And this is something that he wrote into the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, is that he's telling Edmund and Lucy, before they go back to England from Narnia, is that you won't be coming back to Narnia again. That you will be able to find me, though, in your own world by another name. And I think that Lewis kind of struggled with this a little bit later on when he wrote The Final Battle. He comes to this idea of anonymous Christianity, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about specifically the redemption of the characters, and the redemption of each of these characters throughout The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I think for Aslan specifically is this violence. Even when Lucy asks Mr. Beaver, is he safe? And Mr. Beaver says, no, he's not safe. And for me, I think this is something that the evangelical Christian church has picked up on, is that, then God must be violent God and be wrathful and all this other stuff. And I think you can even see this, like there are memes with the picture of C.S. Lewis next to a lion with this quote, is that, no, he is not safe. He is not a safe lion. Yeah. And I think that they really misunderstand, I think, what Mr. Beaver is getting at in that, is that Mr. Beaver is saying that, no, he's going to change you. Is that you're not going to walk away from this encounter with the divine the same as you did, when you came to meet him. Yeah. And in the book, it comes to mean a very violent thing, is that, there's that war afterwards that...
he is a lion.
Yeah, and all the Pevensey children end up becoming these, great war heroes throughout the books, and that Peter leads these armies and stuff like this in Aslan's name. And I think this is really evident in the way that we've kind of treated this work since, is seeing that lion, the Lion of Judah, as violent. But Jesus, when you go back and read the Gospels, Jesus isn't Aslan. That God isn't Aslan. That Jesus is a very non-violent person, and
he had his temper tantrums.
Well, the whole temple thing, but that's only in one of the gospel stories, and so.
But in general, yes, you're right.
Yes, in general, like throughout, he really pushes this view of nonviolence, and this is something that I think Gandhi noticed. This is something that. So many of the other nonviolent protesters throughout their lives really noticed. Like Martin Luther King Jr., he really understood that nonviolence, but it was also not just nonviolence, but also rabble-rousing.
Yeah.
That he understood that you need to stir the pot in order to get things to change.
Yep.
And that he did stir the pot a lot. And in fact, you read like letters from the Birmingham jail, and I think, I don't know if they ever met, but I would like to imagine that C.S. Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. would have gotten along, and Martin Luther King Jr. would have called him out on his racism and on some of his other stuff. But I think that within this, I think Aslan really does come to... I see that struggle in Lewis in this when he wrote the sacrifice of Aslan upon the stone table, was that it was a nonviolent act of sacrificing oneself to free another. And that ultimately this is that when he's being resurrected, there's a war going on and stuff like this, that, he really backed himself into a corner as a writer. That it was not a nonviolent way out of this thing. So, which it really brings us to Narnia. That Narnia in itself is a flawed character throughout the books. And here's a fun fact that J.R.R. Tolkien hated the Chronicles of Narnia. There were a few things. One of the reasons was that he was jealous because C.S. Lewis was able to write this world so much faster than he wrote.
Like I mentioned, though, he also didn't describe every single tree branch as they passed.
Well, that's the thing, is that Tolkien had a different way of building worlds, is that he wanted his world to be extremely detailed because he, as many people would know about J.R.R. Tolkien, is that that's what he grew up doing, is he grew up creating worlds. He created these languages before he even wrote any of these books. Like, he knew Elvish before he even wrote it down in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and the difference with Lewis is that he almost let the reader put the world together themselves.
Exactly.
Like, we are in a forest. You imagine what a forest looks like, because you probably already have an idea of what it looks like. So
yeah, and Tolkien also didn't like them because he felt like his allegory was way heavy-handed. Which, honestly, you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the allegory is very heavy-handed.
Well, according to fourth grade me, it wasn't.
Well, reading it as an adult, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, this is Jesus. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah. And, there were a few other reasons also because of his mix of mythology within the book that, he had Santa Claus, but he also had centaurs, and he had King Arthurian legend and all this other stuff mixed up into his Chronicles of Narnia. Whereas Tolkien kind of created his own mythology, and I would say that really elves and dwarves and orcs and everything else, I think we can attribute that J.R.R. Tolkien really is who created these other beings that, which, by the way, I just have to say, Blight was such a bad movie because it didn't give it justice to the characteristics that were given to those creatures by Tolkien.
Are you talking about Bright?
Yeah, that's what I just said, Bright.
Oh, I thought you said Blight.
Oh, maybe I slurred that a little bit. Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. No, but you're right. I mean, it was as if like we were expected to know what was already happening.
They were also very heavy-handed with their allegory, which was, Tolkien would have been rolling over in his grave.
There's a reason why we're not going to be doing a podcast about that.
Exactly. Because they were very heavy-handed. And I think that Narnia is a character in these books, is this other world that these Pevensey children, like, nobody believes them about this other world existing. Nobody believes them that they actually lived their entire full lives being kings and queens and hunting animals and being these war heroes in another world. And I think that this is what made Chronicles of Narnia for me so important, was that I love stories of other worlds that can be reached and connected to our own world through these little things like wardrobes or magic rings or a picture frame that was made from a tree where the magic rings were buried underneath. Which, by the way, did you know that there's fan fiction about the Pevenseys starting Hogwarts?
Yeah. Well, we know because we looked it up, but but yeah, like Slytherin is Edmund, Peter is Gryffindor, Susan, Ravenclaw, and Lucy,
Hufflepuff.
And it's clear, like, you're like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's very clear. I mean, they're all of their characteristics, and I really think that J.K. Rowling was inspired by C.S. Lewis's work. Mm-hmm. And it was probably because J.K. Rowling read the Chronicles of Narnia to her children.
Yeah. I mean, you can clearly see it. But anyway, we're not talking about Harry Potter.
No, but we're talking about this world of Narnia that is a character within this. And you see that there is these rich histories within Narnia that Lewis never really delves into all that much. That he really lets you kind of create the history for the world in itself, which is, I think, a mark of a great writer, is that somebody who is able to let you develop those worlds without saying exactly what it is. That's what the main writer advice is: don't tell, show. Which I think he did. He did very well in that Narnia is very basic, and it is a flawed world, but it is also a world that is rich with its own being. And sorry, I'm working to redeem everything within this book, so I'm going to work very hard because this for me is something that I grew up with. This is something. Oh, yeah. This is my growing up piece of fiction that I hold tight to, even though it has its flaws.
Like, I will defend Harry Potter to the teeth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand it.
Well, and I want to go with Edmund, too. And Edmund is really the main story of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Is his redemption is that story. And I think that my fun fact for this is that I can't even read
Turkish delights aren't that delightful? Fun fact?
Oh, that Lewis and religion. That Lewis, as I said earlier, is that Lewis said that he came back to Christianity kicking and screaming. That he really saw Christianity as really flawed, and that he really started to see some of the bits and pieces that theology that didn't make sense, and he wrote it into his other books. Mm-hmm. In fact, The Final Battle is all about him struggling with anonymous Christianity, with how do people get to heaven if they don't believe, but they're still good people, if they're still moral people. These were some of his biggest struggles. And what's funny about Lewis is that Lewis is very, very progressive. If you read all of Lewis's works, he is not that evangelical guy. He is not the fundamentalist Lewis that everybody makes him out to be. Is that Mere Christianity was only one of his books. Mm-hmm. And people like, oh yeah, this is his main theology, and this is what people should believe. And no, he wrote a lot of other books about religion. He wrote a lot of other books about Christianity. In fact, that's one of the things that he did was during the Blitz in England, is that he hosted a radio show about Christianity, which I think was something that I probably need to go find those radio shows and listen to
if they exist,
if they still exist. But I think that he really struggled with that, and he wrote a lot of himself into Edmund in the book. Is that Edmund is the most real character, I would argue, throughout the entire book. Is that he has very real desires. He has very real wants and needs.
Yeah, he wants and needs Turkish delights.
Not just that. That's not his only motivation. That is his motivation, more or less, is that he wants to be seen. He wants to be noticed. And you can see this, that he's got the big middle child syndrome going on. He's got the big, my older brother is this, my younger sister is the baby sister, and here I am, just Edmund, and that's why he acts out a lot. And so when the White Witch tempts him with the Turkish delights, it's to say that, you're being seen. Mm-hmm. I see you. I see what you want. I'm going to give that to you. Which he doesn't really give it to him. And I think that ultimately that is the biggest temptation of the world. And that's, I think, exactly what Jesus argues against. And what you can call sin in this world is that falling upon those easy ways to getting what you want, to being seen, to getting what you desire. And I think that's ultimately, ultimately what Christianity and most religions are about is to be in a place where you're seen, where you're heard, and where you're welcomed as family, and that you'll work together to get what everybody wants.
Yep.
And I think that C.S. Lewis really wrote a lot of himself into Edmund, and I think that you can see that throughout the entire rest of the series of Narnia. And I can probably talk about Narnia forever because this is one of my favorite things. So I will turn this over to you.
You'll hand over the talking stick?
I'll hand over the talking stick.
One thing that I noticed, like rewatching the movie again, since it's been a while since I read the books, probably a few years.
Was in the show.
Yeah. Was that really, as adults, we need to start listening to our children a little bit more. We need to start giving them a little bit more credibility where credit is due. For example, Lucy, like right away, she wasn't believed. She came in and she was like, guys, guess what I found? Like, there was this fawn, and he, like, took me home, and then he said he was going to kidnap me, but then he didn't kidnap me, and then and then now I'm home, and it was all a great time, and they're like, you've been gone for, like, 2 minutes at most. Like, what are you talking about? But the thing is with her, like, and this is probably why she's, like, the better child actor out of the four of them, you could really tell that she was telling the truth. Like, you could tell, like, no, like, I lived this. Like, no, this really happened. Like, I'm not lying. Like, why would you think I'm lying? And there is definitely a difference when you interact with a child between them telling a story and them telling the truth. Especially for children that you know pretty well in your life. You get to pick up on these, like, little clues.
Fun fact about Lucy... That scene where she first sees Narnia is actually the first time that the actor is actually seeing the set for Narnia.
Yep. And she's very, very adamant, like, no, like, I did do this. And she shows clear signs that, yes, she is telling the truth. And to be honest, like, who in their right mind would be able to think of a story that complex, that detailed within the 2-minute time span that she was away from her family?
Yeah.
She was able to give so many details that, like, there had to have been some truth to it. And even though it was, like, far-fetched and fantastical, like, everybody just kind of brushed her off instead of trying to, think of why she's doing this. Like, 'cause she doesn't seem like the type of child to think of stories and just tell them, She doesn't seem like that kind of kid. So I don't know what her siblings were thinking of. But anyway, and she clearly was giving them the clues. I mean, she even became so upset, too, that she wasn't believed. Like, and that's another telltale sign that a child is really telling the truth about something is how they react when you don't believe them. A lot of the times when kids every kid's a little bit different, but from my experience with me dealing with my own nieces and nephews and the times I've taught children, when they're lying and you, like, clearly don't believe their lie, then they just kind of move on and go out. They're like, okay, that didn't work, and they just keep on going about their day. Now, when they are telling the truth and they're not being believed, they get really upset. Because they have been told all of their life to tell the truth. And when they do tell the truth, they're not believed. Like, what? Of course they're going to be upset because they're supposed to be believed. They told the truth. And we tell them that if you tell the truth, we're going to believe you. And when it doesn't happen, obviously they're going to get upset. Mm-hmm. And yes, kids lie. Obviously. That's part of growing up is kids learning how to lie and learning what type of lies, I guess, are good versus bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Which are white lies.
Yeah.
White lies.
Yeah. But we should be a little bit more observant when they're trying to tell us something. Because sometimes, even though they may be lying, there might be a little bit of truth in there. Like maybe they've experienced something that they shouldn't have, or maybe they witnessed something that they shouldn't have. And so they tell you just a little bit of the truth hidden within the lies just to see how you're going to react. Because if it's going to be a way that is going to be negative for them, they probably aren't going to tell you the full truth. They're going to keep, telling a little bit of the lie. For example, when I was a kid, my little sister and I broke a lamp. And we broke a lamp by spinning in this chair. It was one of those chairs it was soft. I've only ever seen them I haven't seen them past the year 2000, so I don't know if they're out there anymore, but they're similar to a lazy boy in that they were cushioned, but they also swiveled. They went around in a circle, so you could pretty much place them anywhere. I don't think I've ever seen a chair since then outside of my house, but anyway, just giving you a vision of what the chair looked like.
It was an armchair, like a padded desk chair.
Not really. It was more for watching television. I wouldn't say it was a desk chair. It was to lounge.
Oh, so just like an armchair, with a swivel.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
All right.
But a little bit more cushiony. Anyway, so our favorite thing to do was to have take turns sitting in the chair and spinning the other person around. And my mom constantly was telling us not to do that. And what did we do? We did it anyway. And one time, I can't remember who was spinning, but somebody knocked down the lamp as they were spinning. And immediately, we're like, okay, we got to think of something. What in our world is truthful enough to where we can tell our mom to see if we can get away with it? I know we have a little dog. Let's just say that he turned the chair around himself and the chair knocked down the lamp. I mean, because dogs knock things over. Of course, my mom didn't believe us. And we were very adamant that it was the truth. And of course, she didn't believe us because she probably knew the signs of our lies. And, but anyway, that's just an example of how, kids can still tell the truth. The chair did knock down the lamp. We just also sprinkled a little bit of lie in there. But it was also to test out her reaction. Now, if she was okay, whatever, then maybe we would have been oh, it was really us. But she did not have a very good reaction to it, obviously. And this kind of brings up, too, how when kids do tell us something, and they're very, very adamant about it, maybe not when it comes to knocking down lamps, but maybe something a little bit more serious, that we got to take their concerns seriously. Mm-hmm. We've got to take their concerns seriously, especially when they're pointing out something that is not right. Because kids have a very good sense of what's right and what's wrong. That's something that I feel this is just me, I feel that most of us are born with that sense of what's right and wrong. Mm-hmm. We have that little feeling inside of us, even as Peter, our son, not even 2 yet. He sees somebody fighting on television, and he goes, uh-oh. I don't even think we've told him, hey, you shouldn't fight. Maybe he's, pushed somebody occasionally, but...
Yeah, maybe at daycare, so...
But not fighting the way that it is on television. Mm-hmm. And he is always uh-oh, or something knocks down on TV. Uh-oh. He knows that, this is bad.
Yeah.
He clearly knows that this is bad. And I'm going to go into another story of when I was young, and when my concern was not taken very seriously. I remember coming home, and I was really upset, and I told my older sister that somebody got in trouble at school, and I don't think that it was the right person to have gotten in trouble at school, and I really, really needed to tell somebody, and I felt like the little justice warrior in me was starting to spring out, and my sister took me back to school. I sat with the principal. I told him what was wrong, and the principal did listen, but then immediately just dismissed my concern. Thanks for telling me, but you're wrong. Mm-hmm. kind of a thing. And I was just okay. And still to this day, I believe that my intuition was right, because I I remember seeing what I saw. I remember hearing what I heard. And yet the principal just like brushed me off.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe if the principal had explained maybe why they made their decision, and I know it's not totally my business to know why this person really got into trouble, but instead of just saying, oh, thank you for letting me know, that will help me develop my decision. Like, it was just like, nope, I made the decision. I heard what he had to say. It doesn't change anything. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on right now in our country. Like, of course, these kids are older. They're teenagers, almost adults. A lot of them have been raised on, like, needing to point out injustices in the world, just like we were, but a little bit more stronger, I feel.
Well, they had more young adult fiction to base it off of.
That's true. That is true.
And pretty much all young adult fiction has been about young adults standing up to tyranny, post-apocalyptic event.
Yes, but they're bringing up their concerns, which are legitimate concerns, and yet so many adults are just brushing them off.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you don't know. Sure, you can vote next year, but you really don't know. You're still a child until next year, so just move along. Let adults handle it.
Well, and not only that, I mean, they're children, and so they tweet impetuously. They do what children do, and what's funny is that everybody's treating them like one of the pundits, and I think it's more or less because they're scared. They're scared of these kids. They're scared of of the change that they're bringing. And what's funny is that the same person that they're defending by not believing these kids and attacking these kids has tweeted much worse stuff, and he's a 70-year-old man.
I know. Like, these kids, like, I think the difference is because they are teenagers, because they know they're not going to be taken seriously if they just, run whatever comes out of their head. They are more like sitting down, formulating how they're going to bring this up, because a lot of them, like, the speeches are clearly written down. They're not just like just coming out of their head. Like, they clearly have taken the time and thought about it, maybe ran it by somebody else before they actually gave it. Like, they want to make sure that they're getting the message across the way they want to get the message across. And that is a very adult thing to do. A lot of adults, certain somebody who just, probably tweets on the toilet, does not obviously think about what they're saying before they say it.
Yeah.
They don't think about the consequences of what they're actually going to be saying. And the kids nowadays who are standing up, and to be honest, I'm glad, because I wish I had the platform they had when I was a teen. I know I would have stood up for this kind of stuff. And I just wasn't, I guess, given the platform. I mean, I remember I did do a speech. I was in speech and debate, nerd alert, in high school. And I talked about the importance of voting and why you should vote. And some of the judges, I remember reading the comments, were just like, well, that's great, but women already have the right to vote, or something like that. And I'm like, I mentioned women voters in one paragraph. The rest of my speech was about how collectively everybody needs to vote.
Yeah.
And that, it just goes to show that people just don't really take kids' concerns seriously, even though I say we because I'm reverting back to when I was in high school, really did think about it.
Yeah.
And really do know what they want to say.
Well, and I think this is the principles in this parable, very much, within the redemption and with listening, is that it's both understanding that, people have reasons for why they say things.
Yeah.
That if, a lot of these things would have been taken care of if they were actually listened to and heard and seen for who and what they are, but that nobody is beyond redemption either. And I think that this is something that within The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is very evident throughout the entire thing, is that nobody is beyond redemption. And I think that that's where Lewis got a little bit off track, is that he could have redeemed... I had there on the tip of my brain the name of the White Witch, her name, and I can't remember it for the life of me now. But her name is given in The Magician's Nephew. And she, even she could have been redeemed, that she was the last survivor of a people that were all killed off. Like some people come to take that to mean is that she's the one that killed everybody, but, there's also, maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was, she'd just been alone for that long that she just was driven crazy.
Yeah.
And, nobody is beyond redemption. And I think that is evident, should be evident in this book and throughout the Chronicles of Narnia. Anyway, we're running out of time here, so we got to wrap this up. Our feedback schedule coming up. We've got next week we're doing Thor Ragnarok.
Yay!
We are actually in the middle of watching that movie, and so far it's fantastic. So we've got a lot to talk about next week. The week after, hopefully, will be Black Panther. Hopefully, we can get a babysitter for next weekend and be able to go see that and be able to give it some thought of what we're going to be saying about that in 2 weeks. Beyond that will be Black Mirror Crocodile. That is probably the bleakest episode of this season. And
I'm just shaking my head because, oh God.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, you can come and find us, talk to us, let us know what you think about this episode or any other episode, or even give your input about the topics that we brought up, or something we didn't even talk about for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or anything else that we've talked about so far. You can text us or send us a voicemail message at 720-372-3879. That is a Google Voice number. You can find us on social media. We are on Facebook. We've got a group, The Patron Saints of Pop Culture. The page is The Honest Faith. You can find us on Twitter at Real Honest Faith. You can email us honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. Or find us on our website, thehonestfaith.com. And don't forget to go find Chris's blog at MuchAdoAboutMuffin.blog.
Yes, and please, I want to throw this in there. Wherever you find, or however you listen to us in terms of the podcast, please rate us. Just write a little review. It'd be much appreciated.
So with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.